My wife has been secretly sending money to a child I didn't know existed. 10 years ago, I stood at an altar and promised to love Elena until I died. We were young, ambitious, and broke. We built our life together, brick by brick. We started a small logistics company in our garage, surviving on instant noodles and working 18-hour days. We were partners in every sense. If I was the engine, she was the steering wheel. We balanced each other perfectly. Over the years, that garage business transformed into a multi-million-dollar empire. We moved from a leaky apartment to a sprawling estate in the hills. We drove luxury cars and took vacations to places I couldn't even pronounce as a kid. We had everything money could buy, except for one thing: a family. We tried for 5 years to have a baby, which was the only thing I truly wanted. I dreamed of teaching a son how to play baseball, or walking a daughter down the aisle. We consulted doctors and underwent tests. Eventually, they told us the issue was on Elena's side. They said her egg quality was too low, and that her uterus couldn't support a pregnancy. I remember the day she told me the news. She sat on the edge of our bed, weeping, saying she felt broken, and less of a woman for not being able to give me a child. I held her for hours, assuring her it didn't matter, and that she was enough for me. I buried my own grief, my desire to be a father, just to ensure she didn't feel guilty. We decided against adoption. Elena said it would be too painful to raise a child that wasn't hers, a constant reminder of her failure. So we focused on our business and on each other. I thought we were happy, and had accepted our lives as a childless power couple. I trusted her more than anyone, and gave her full access to everything. She managed our household accounts, personal investments, and I focused on the operations of the company. It was a system that worked, or so I thought. The first crack in the facade appeared 3 months ago. It was a Tuesday when our chief financial officer, Jerry, who had been with us since the beginning, suffered a sudden heart attack. Thankfully, he survived but needed an immediate leave of absence. I had to step in and handle the quarterly audit myself, while we searched for a temporary replacement. As I went through the personal expense accounts, double-checking the transfers between our business and personal holdings, I noticed a recurring payment that looked odd. It was labeled HK Consulting, a transfer of $8,000 going out on the 1st of every month. I didn't recognize the vendor. We used many consultants, but usually for IT or marketing. This was coming from our personal account, not the business account. I clicked on the transaction history. The payments had been going on for 4 years. I calculated in my head nearly $400,000. I didn't panic at first. I assumed it was something for her mother, who was in a nursing home. Maybe we were covering extra care I had forgotten about. But why label it HK Consulting? I decided to ask the bank for the recipient details. After a few calls and security verifications, I got the routing number and account holder's name. It didn't belong to a company. It belonged to a woman named Sarah Jenkins. I didn't know a Sarah Jenkins. That night, I tried to act normal. Elena was in the kitchen, drinking wine, and looking as beautiful as ever. I watched her, searching for any sign of deception. She smiled, asked about my day, and kissed me. It felt real, like the woman I had loved for 10 years. The next day, however, I hired a private investigator named Mike, an ex-cop who was expensive but discreet. I gave him Sarah Jenkins' name and the bank details, asking him to find out why my wife was sending her money every month. 2 days later, Mike called. "You need to come to my office," he said, his voice flat. "I have pictures." I drove there with a pit in my stomach, expecting to hear that Elena was being blackmailed, or had a secret gambling problem. Mike slid a manila envelope across his desk. I opened it. The first photo was of a nice, modest suburban house about an hour away from our city. The second photo was of a woman named Sarah Jenkins Young, maybe in her late 20s, pretty in a plain way. The third photo made my breath catch. It was a picture of Elena standing in the driveway of Sarah's house, holding a little boy who looked about 3 or 4 years old. He had dark curly hair and a dimple on his left cheek. I have dark curly hair and a dimple on my left cheek. Who was the kid? I whispered, my hands shaking. His name is Leo, Mike said. He turned 4 last month. Sarah Jenkins is listed as his mother on the school forms, but there's no father listed. Is it mine? I asked, feeling dizzy. Had I slept with someone and forgotten? No, I don't think so, Mike said. Look at the dates. You were on that business trip in Tokyo when conception would have happened. But look at the next photo. I flipped to the next picture. It was Elena again, kissing the boy on the forehead, looking maternal, like a mother. She visits twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Mike explained. She tells you she goes to Pilates and therapy during those afternoons, right? Yes, I replied. She goes there. She brings toys and groceries and stays for dinner. I dug into Sarah Jenkins' background and learned she was a surrogate for a wealthy couple that backed out 4 years ago at least. That was the rumor in her neighborhood. The pieces started to click together, but they didn't form a complete picture. A surrogate? I asked. I need DNA, I said. I need to know who that boy really is. I managed to get a juice box from their recycling bin. Mike said it was already at the lab, and we should know in 48 hours. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. I lived in my house with a stranger. I watched Elena sleep and type on her phone, realizing she was texting Sarah, checking on the boy. When Mike called me back, he sounded hesitant. The results are in, he said. The boy Leo is definitely related to Elena. 99.9% match for maternity. She's the mother? I stammered. But she's infertile. The doctors said she was, Mike replied. Or she lied. But she is the mother. And as for the father, I asked, is it me? No, Mike said. We compared it against the hair sample you gave me from your hairbrush. You are not the father. A wave of relief washed over me, followed by a tsunami of rage. She cheated, she got pregnant. Instead of terminating the pregnancy, or telling me, she had the baby and hid him. So, who is the father? I demanded. Mike had run it against a few other samples I provided. It's Mark, he said. Mark, my best friend, the vice president of our company, the man who stood beside me at my wedding, who had dinner at our house every Friday night. Mark was happily married to his wife, Lisa. The room spun, and I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Elena and Mark had an affair. She got pregnant, and instead of destroying 2 marriages and a business, they devised a plan. She faked her infertility issues. I remembered she had gone to Europe for 6 months years ago. She claimed her aunt in Spain was dying of cancer, and she needed to manage the estate and care for her. I had offered to go, but she insisted I stay and run the company during a critical growth phase. She FaceTimed me, but only from the chest up, saying the connection was bad. She wasn't in Spain. She was somewhere else hiding a pregnancy. After giving birth, she handed the boy off to Sarah, probably a paid nanny posing as a guardian, and returned to me, playing the grieving barren wife. For 4 years, she and Mark had been using our money to support their secret love child. I drove home in silence, past crying. I was beyond sadness now. I was in a cold, dark place, the place where plans are made. I didn't confront her that night, or Mark the next day at the office. I smiled, shook his hand, and kissed Elena's cheek. I needed to destroy them, not just get a divorce. I wanted to burn their lives to the ground, so thoroughly they would never rise from the ashes. The plan took 2 months to execute. First, I needed to secure the assets. I told Mark and Elena that we were being looked at for a massive acquisition by a global conglomerate. To make the deal go through, we needed to consolidate our personal assets into a holding trust to protect them from tax liability during the buyout. They trusted me. Why wouldn't they? I was the golden goose, the one who made them rich. They signed the papers without reading the fine print, effectively signing everything they owned over to me. Second, I needed to expose the fraud. I dug into Mark's corporate spending and found what I was looking for. He had schemed a little off the top unrelated to the kid, just greed. I took those records and tweaked them, making it look like he had embezzled millions instead of thousands. I planted a digital trail leading straight to his personal laptop. Third, the reveal. I waited for our 10th anniversary party, a black tie gala. Everyone was there, friends, employees, Mark and his wife Lisa, and of course, Elena, who looked stunning in a red dress. She gave a speech about how lucky she was to have a husband who supported her through thick and thin. I walked up to the microphone to respond, looking out at the crowd. I saw Mark smiling, champagne glass in hand, and Elena looking at me with those lying eyes. Thank you all for coming, I said. Tonight is about truth. 10 years is a long time. You learn a lot about a person during that time. Sometimes, you learn things you never wanted to know. I signaled the AV guy. I had prepared a slideshow. I want to share a special moment with you all. The huge screen lit up. It wasn't a photo from our wedding. It was a picture of Elena holding the boy. This is Leo, I said. He's 4 years old. He's a beautiful boy. The crowd murmured. Someone whispered, who is that? For a long time, Elena and I struggled to have children, or so I was told. But it turns out Elena has a child. This is him. She's been visiting him secretly for 4 years. The murmurs turned into gasps. Mark looked like he might vomit. She hit him, I continued, my voice rising, because of who the father is. I clicked the remote. The next slide displayed the DNA test result, blown up so everyone could read it. Probability of paternity, Mark Stevens, 99.9%. The room erupted. Lisa, Mark's wife, screamed, turning on him with her purse. You bastard, you liar, she shrieked, hitting him. Mark tried to defend himself, but the crowd was turning against him. Elena was frozen, looking at me, pleading with her eyes. Please stop, she mouthed. I'm not done, I said calmly. I clicked the remote again, revealing a bank statement. For 4 years, Elena and Mark have been using company funds and my personal savings to pay for this secret life. They stole nearly $500,000 to hide their affair. I turned to Mark, now bleeding from a scratch on his face from Lisa. Mark, you're fired. And also, the police are waiting outside. I turned over evidence of his embezzlement this morning, the real embezzlement, not just the child support payments. Mark's eyes widened as he glanced toward the exit, but 2 uniformed officers were already walking in. I turned to Elena. She was crying real, ugly tears, walking toward the stage. Baby, please, she sobbed. I can explain. It was a mistake. We didn't want to hurt you. I leaned down into the microphone so everyone could hear. You didn't want to hurt me? You let me believe I was the reason we didn't have a family. You watched me cry over our empty nursery while you played mommy to his kid. You are the cruelest person I've ever met. I stood up straight and addressed the crowd one last time. The party is over. Enjoy the gift bags. I walked off the stage and out the back door. Elena tried to follow, but security, whom I had briefed beforehand, stopped her. You're trespassing, the guard said. The owner has asked that you be removed. I own this company, she screamed. Not anymore, I thought. I got in my car and drove away. The fallout was nuclear. Mark went to prison for 5 years due to the damning evidence I handed over. His wife Lisa divorced him and took whatever assets I hadn't seized. He was ruined. Elena lost everything because she had signed the assets over to the trust. She had no claim to the house, cars, or bank accounts. I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery and fraud. Since we had an infidelity clause in our prenup, one she insisted on, she walked away with nothing but her clothes. She tried to sue, but she had no money for lawyers. I heard she moved into a rental house with Sarah and the kid for a while, but when the money stopped flowing, Sarah kicked her out. Sarah didn't care about Elena. She cared about the paycheck. Last I heard, Elena was working as a receptionist at a car dealership in a different state, living in a small apartment. She sends me emails sometimes, begging for forgiveness, apologizing, saying she misses me and the life we had. I never replied, but I did one thing. I set up a trust fund for Leo. It's not his fault his parents are monsters. I put enough money in there to pay for his college and a good start in life. But there's a condition. He only gets the money when he turns 21, and only if he has zero contact with Mark or Elena. I control the trust, so in a way, I finally get to be a father figure, an invisible hand guiding his life, ensuring he doesn't turn out like them. I'm sitting on the balcony of my new penthouse right now. It's quiet, just the good kind of quiet, the kind that comes from cleaning out all the trash. I took a sip of my whiskey and looked at the city lights. They thought they could play me, that I was the fool. But they forgot one thing about me. I built an empire from a garage. I know how to build things up, and I know exactly where the weak points are to bring them crashing down.